The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor as I stared at my empty office, cardboard boxes scattered across what used to be my mahogany desk. The Chicago skyline stretched endlessly beyond the glass, a concrete jungle of ambition and broken dreams where I'd built my career one grueling day at a time. 24 hours ago, I was the regional operations director for one of Chicago's most prestigious consulting firms, commanding a team of 15 highly skilled professionals and overseeing accounts worth over $200 million annually. Today, I was apparently nothing more than another casualty in a corporate power play I never saw coming, despite all my years of navigating the treacherous waters of executive politics. My name is Sarah Chun, and I've spent the last 8 years climbing the ladder at Meridian Consulting Group, working 18-hour days and sacrificing countless weekends to prove that a first-generation immigrant could make it in America's cutthroat business world. My parents had arrived from Taiwan with nothing but determination and a belief that education could unlock any door. They worked double shifts at a laundromat in Chinatown, saving every penny to put me through Northwestern University, where I graduated summa cum laude with degrees in business administration and international finance. What I didn't expect, after all those years of proving myself through pure merit and relentless dedication, was to lose everything to a 25-year-old with zero real-world experience and a direct line to the CEO's heart. If you're enjoying this story of workplace drama and corporate revenge, please subscribe to our channel to help us bring you more real-life stories like this one. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global audience. It all started 3 weeks ago during what should have been a routine team lunch at the Sterling, an upscale restaurant nestled in the heart of Chicago's financial district where our department celebrated quarterly achievements and closed major deals. The establishment was the kind of place where power lunches happened daily, where million-dollar contracts were signed over perfectly prepared salmon and aged wine, where the city's business elite gathered to shape the future of American commerce. The autumn air was crisp that Tuesday afternoon, with Lake Michigan's winds carrying hints of the approaching winter, and I remember feeling particularly optimistic about the upcoming board presentation I'd been preparing for months. Our team had not only met but exceeded all targets by 30%, bringing in new clients from Fortune 500 companies and expanding existing relationships that generated unprecedented revenue streams. I was confident this would be the performance review that finally secured my long-awaited promotion to vice president, a position I'd been working toward since my first day at Meridian 8 years earlier. Marcus Wellington III sat at the head of our table, his silver hair perfectly styled despite being 68 years old and having built his business empire from a small accounting firm 40 years earlier. As the founder and CEO of Meridian, he commanded respect from everyone in the room, including me, though I'd learned to navigate his sometimes unpredictable moods and demanding perfectionism. He was known throughout Chicago's business community as a visionary leader who could spot talent from across a crowded room, but also as someone who valued loyalty above almost everything else. But that day, he wasn't alone at our carefully arranged table. Beside him sat a young man I'd never seen before, someone who looked like he'd stepped out of a college fraternity rather than a boardroom. His expensive suit unable to mask the entitled confidence that seemed to radiate from his very presence. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my son, Bradley," Marcus announced, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that made even senior partners straighten their spines and pay attention. The word carried weight in the elegant dining room, causing conversations at nearby tables to momentarily pause as other business professionals recognized the significance of this introduction. "He's just graduated from Northwestern with his MBA, magna cum laude I might add, and he'll be joining our operations team immediately. I expect you all to give him the same respect and support you've always given me." The word, son, hit me like a physical blow, sending shockwaves through my carefully constructed understanding of office dynamics and succession planning. I knew Marcus had never been married, having devoted his entire adult life to building Meridian from nothing into one of the Midwest's most respected consulting firms. Office gossip had always suggested he was too devoted to the company for personal relationships, working 70-hour weeks well into his 60s and expecting the same dedication from his executive team. But as I studied Bradley's features more carefully, the same sharp jawline that could intimidate junior staff, the identical steel-gray eyes that seemed to see through corporate facades, the confident posture that commanded attention, The family resemblance was undeniably strong. This was adoption, I realized with growing unease, probably recent, and definitely strategic in its timing. Bradley stood up with the effortless confidence of someone who'd never faced real rejection or had to prove himself in competitive environments, extending his manicured hand around the table with practiced charm. His movements were smooth and calculated, suggesting expensive etiquette training and years of social privilege that most of us could only imagine. Great to meet everyone. Dad's told me so much about the incredible work you're all doing here, the innovative solutions you've developed, and the impressive client relationships you've built. His handshake was firm and measured, his smile perfectly practiced, and his custom-tailored Armani suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent in Chicago's expensive downtown market. When he reached me, his grip lingered just a moment too long, his eyes assessing me with the calculating gaze of someone sizing up potential competition. Sarah, right? The Regional Operations Director. Dad mentioned you're quite the overachiever, really dedicated to the company's success. There was something in his tone that made my skin crawl, a subtle condescension masked as a compliment that every successful woman in corporate America learns to recognize instinctively. It was the tone used by men who viewed professional women as interesting novelties rather than legitimate equals, the voice of privilege speaking to perceived inferiority. I smiled politely, drawing on years of corporate training and countless difficult client meetings where maintaining composure meant the difference between closing deals and losing millions. Welcome to the team, Bradley. I look forward to working with you and sharing what I've learned about our operations. The words felt like acid in my mouth, but professionalism demanded courtesy even when every instinct screamed danger. The lunch continued with Marcus detailing Bradley's impressive academic achievements with the pride of a father showcasing his prized possession, summa cum laude graduation, president of his business fraternity where he'd organized networking events with Fortune 500 executives, summer internships at Goldman Sachs and McKinsey where he'd apparently impressed senior partners with his analytical abilities and natural leadership skills. Each accomplishment felt like a carefully aimed dagger, not because I begrudged academic success or resented hard work, but because I could see exactly where this corporate theater was heading. In the business world, I'd learned through bitter experience. Blood runs thicker than performance metrics, and family connections often trumped years of proven dedication and measurable results. 2 days later, I arrived at the office at my usual time of 6:30 a.m., beating most of the morning traffic and giving myself quiet hours to prepare for what promised to be a challenging day of client presentations and strategic planning sessions. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt different that morning, though I couldn't quite identify why until I stepped into what should have been my private domain. There, in my glass-walled conference room with its panoramic views of Lake Michigan, I found Bradley spreading architectural blueprints across my mahogany table while speaking animatedly to our head of facilities management and 2 contractors I didn't recognize. The morning sun streamed through my floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the scene like a spotlight on a stage where I was apparently no longer the leading character, but merely an unwitting extra in someone else's corporate takeover drama. "Excuse me," I said, stepping into what was supposed to be my sanctuary, my voice carrying the authority I'd built through 8 years of successful leadership and countless high-stakes negotiations. "Is there something I can help you with?" The question was polite but firm, delivered with the professional courtesy that masked my growing alarm at finding my office occupied without consultation or explanation. Bradley looked up with that same practiced smile, but this time it carried a sharper edge, the satisfied expression of someone who knew they held all the cards in a game I hadn't realized we were playing. "Oh, Sarah, perfect timing as always." His tone was cheerful but patronizing, the voice of someone delivering news they knew would be unwelcome. "Dad and I were discussing office optimization and workflow efficiency, and we think this space would be much better utilized for strategic planning and executive meetings. You know how important forward thinking is in our industry, especially with the increasing competition from boutique consulting firms." The facilities manager, a nervous middle-aged man named Roger who'd always been respectful and deferential to my authority during our previous interactions, wouldn't meet my eyes as he shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. His discomfort was palpable, suggesting he understood exactly what was happening but felt powerless to object to orders from the executive suite. "Ms. Chun, Mr. Wellington, The older Mr. Wellington personally requested we begin the transition immediately to minimize disruption to ongoing operations. He paused, swallowing hard before delivering the final blow. Your new office is ready on the 38th floor, and the moving team will transfer your personal items this afternoon. My blood turned to ice as the full implications hit me with devastating clarity. The 38th floor was where we kept junior analysts, administrative assistants, and entry-level staff who were just beginning their careers. It was a floor I hadn't visited in years except to conduct interviews or deliver company-wide presentations to new hires. This wasn't just a lateral move or a temporary adjustment. It was a demotion disguised as organizational restructuring, and everyone in the building would recognize it immediately. I see. And when was this decision made? I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake of emotions threatening to crack my professional facade. This morning, during the executive planning session, Bradley replied with casual indifference, already turning back to his blueprints as if my presence was merely a minor interruption in his important work. Efficiency is absolutely key in modern business operations. Don't you think? We need to make sure the right people are in the right positions, optimizing our human resources for maximum productivity and strategic impact. The condescension in his voice was no longer masked, and his dismissive tone made it clear that he considered this conversation over and my objections irrelevant. That afternoon, I found myself in a cramped office with no windows and walls so thin I could hear every phone conversation from neighboring cubicles, sharing a floor with employees who were just starting their careers and earning salaries a fraction of what I commanded. The contrast was stark and intentionally humiliating. Instead of panoramic Lake Michigan views that had inspired me during countless late-night strategy sessions, I now had a vista of the building's industrial air conditioning units and exhaust fans. Instead of the respectful nods and collaborative discussions from senior staff who valued my expertise and experience, I received sympathetic glances and whispered conversations from junior colleagues who understood exactly what had happened to me and feared they might be next. The message was clear to everyone in the organization. This is what happens when you don't have family connections to protect you, regardless of your performance or contributions. The space itself was a mockery of everything I'd worked to achieve. My mahogany desk had been replaced with standard-issue furniture that wobbled whenever I typed. My personal awards and recognition plaques looked ridiculous on the cheap metal shelving, like expensive jewelry displayed in a discount store window. The fluorescent lighting was harsh and unflattering, designed for efficiency rather than comfort, casting everything in an institutional glare that reminded me more of a government office than a prestigious consulting firm. But Marcus and his newly adopted son had underestimated one crucial thing about me. I hadn't built my career by accepting defeat gracefully or by allowing setbacks to define my future. 8 years of fighting my way up from entry-level analyst to regional director had taught me that success in corporate America required not just competence and dedication, but also strategic thinking and the ability to turn apparent weaknesses into devastating strengths. That evening, I stayed late in my diminished office, not out of dedication to my suddenly downgraded role, but because I was planning something far more ambitious and strategically sophisticated than anyone could imagine. The building was nearly empty by 8 p.m., with only security guards making their rounds and a few workaholic associates like myself remaining behind. The harsh fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I opened my laptop and began composing what would prove to be the most important emails of my professional career, each one carefully crafted to initiate a chain reaction that would ultimately reshape the entire power structure of Meridian Consulting Group. You see, during my 8 years at Meridian, I hadn't just been climbing the corporate ladder through sheer determination and long hours. I'd been systematically building an extensive network of relationships based on mutual respect, shared success, and genuine professional collaboration. Real relationships that extended far beyond the walls of our Chicago headquarters, connecting me with people who mattered in ways that Marcus had never fully understood or appreciated. Board members who'd witnessed my presentations and been impressed by my strategic insights. Major clients who trusted my judgment and relied on my expertise to solve their most complex challenges. Industry leaders who respected my reputation and sought my input on market trends. Regulatory officials who appreciated my thorough understanding of compliance requirements. People who knew my work intimately and valued my contributions to their own success. These relationships weren't built on family connections or inherited privilege, but on demonstrated competence, consistent delivery, and the kind of professional integrity that created lasting partnerships in the business world. Every successful project had been an investment in my network. Every satisfied client had become an advocate for my capabilities. Every industry conference had been an opportunity to expand my sphere of influence beyond the confines of any single organization. My first call was to Patricia Hoffman, a board member and former CEO of a Fortune 500 company who'd always appreciated my direct communication style. The phone rang twice before her familiar voice answered. "Sarah, what a pleasant surprise. How are things at Meridian?" "Patricia, I need to discuss something sensitive with you. Do you have a few minutes for a confidential conversation?" There was a pause, then the sound of a door closing. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I chose my words carefully, knowing that corporate politics required finesse even when you were fighting for your professional life. "I wanted to give you a heads up about some recent organizational changes that might affect the board's strategic initiatives. Marcus has made some decisions that could impact our operational effectiveness." "I'm listening." Over the next 20 minutes, I outlined the situation without once mentioning Bradley's lack of qualifications or my personal grievance. Instead, I focused on measurable impacts, how productivity metrics might suffer, how client relationships could be disrupted, how the company's reputation for merit-based advancement was being compromised. Patricia listened without interruption, occasionally asking pointed questions that showed she understood the implications. "This is concerning, Sarah. The board approved significant investments in operational excellence based partly on your track record. If that foundation is being undermined..." She trailed off, but I could hear the wheels turning. "I think we need to have a broader conversation about this at our next meeting." My second call was to David Morrison, the chairman of our largest client's board. David and I had worked together on a merger that saved his company $40 million, and he'd always said he owed me a favor. Tonight, I was ready to collect. "David, it's Sarah Chun from Meridian. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Sarah, never too late for you. That quarterly report you sent last week was excellent as always. What can I do for you?" "Actually, I'm calling about something that might affect our ongoing partnership. There have been some internal changes that could impact service delivery on your account." The conversation followed a similar pattern: professional concerns presented objectively, with subtle implications that allowed David to draw his own conclusions. By the end of the call, he was asking pointed questions about Meridian's commitment to maintaining the team that had delivered such exceptional results for his company. "You know, Sarah, our contract is up for renewal next quarter. We've been very happy with the current arrangement, but if there are going to be significant changes to the team structure..." He left the statement hanging, but the message was clear. I made 6 more calls that night, each one carefully orchestrated to plant seeds of doubt about the recent organizational changes without ever appearing to undermine Marcus directly. These weren't complaints or emotional outbursts. They were strategic communications designed to protect relationships I'd spent years building. The next morning, I arrived at my windowless office to find an email from Marcus's assistant requesting my presence in the executive conference room at 10 a.m. The subject line read, "Urgent board discussion." The executive floor felt different as I walked toward the conference room, my heels clicking against marble floors that suddenly seemed foreign. Through the glass walls, I could see the full board assembled, 12 of the most powerful business leaders in Chicago, their faces serious as they reviewed documents spread across the mahogany table. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence slightly diminished by the tension in the room. Bradley was nowhere to be seen, which I found interesting. When I entered, Patricia offered me a professional nod, while David gave me what could only be described as an encouraging smile. "Sarah, please take a seat," Marcus began, his voice carrying none of its usual warmth. "We've been having some discussions about recent organizational changes, and several board members have expressed concerns about operational continuity." I settled into my chair, maintaining the neutral expression I'd perfected over years of high-stakes meetings. "I'm happy to address any concerns the board might have." Patricia leaned forward, her silver hair catching the light from the windows that offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan, the same views I'd lost just days before. "Sarah, We've heard there have been some restructuring decisions that might affect client relationships and operational efficiency. Can you walk us through the current situation? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. Not revenge, not personal grievance, but professional accountability presented with the kind of strategic thinking that had built my career. Certainly, over the past week, there have been significant changes to our operational structure that I believe warrant board consideration. For the next 30 minutes, I presented a comprehensive analysis of how recent organizational changes could impact client retention, team productivity, and the company's reputation for merit-based advancement. I used data, specific examples, and projections that demonstrated potential financial impact. Every word was chosen carefully, every chart designed to support objective business concerns rather than personal complaints. When I finished, the room was silent except for the sound of pages turning as board members reviewed the documentation I'd prepared. Finally, James Crawford, the longest-serving board member, spoke up. "Marcus, these are serious concerns. Our fiduciary responsibility requires us to consider the potential impact on shareholder value and client satisfaction." He looked directly at me. "Sarah, in your professional opinion, what would be the most effective way to address these operational challenges?" I had anticipated this question, and my answer was ready. The board has always made decisions based on performance metrics and strategic value rather than personal relationships. I believe that principles should guide any organizational decisions, especially those affecting client-facing operations and revenue-generating departments. The message was clear without being explicit: merit should trump nepotism, and performance should determine position. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his voice remained steady. "The board will need time to discuss these concerns. Sarah, thank you for your comprehensive analysis. We'll reconvene after lunch to address next steps." I left the conference room knowing that the next few hours would determine not just my career, but the future direction of a company I'd helped build. The morning rain had stopped, and sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. At 2 p.m., Marcus's assistant called me back to the executive conference room. This time, the atmosphere was different, resolved rather than tense, decided rather than deliberative. The board members' faces showed the satisfaction of people who'd made a difficult but necessary decision. Patricia spoke first, her tone formal but not unkind. "After extensive discussion, the board has voted to restructure the operational hierarchy to better align with performance metrics and client needs." She paused, looking directly at me. "Effective immediately, Sarah Chan is promoted to Senior Vice President of Operations, with expanded authority over all client-facing departments." The words hit me like a physical force, but I maintained my professional composure. "Thank you for your confidence. I'm honored by the board's decision." Marcus cleared his throat, his voice carrying a weariness that hadn't been there that morning. "Bradley will be transitioning to a consulting role in our business development department, where he can utilize his academic training while gaining practical experience." It was corporate speak for demotion, wrapped in language that preserved some dignity. As the meeting concluded and board members filed out, offering congratulations and expressing confidence in my expanded role, I realized that justice in the corporate world wasn't about revenge. It was about allowing competence to rise to its natural level and ensuring that merit ultimately prevailed over privilege. That evening, I stood in what was once again my office, but now expanded to include the adjacent conference room and a staff of 12 instead of 6. The Lake Michigan view stretched before me, city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from colleagues, clients, and industry contacts who'd heard about my promotion through the business community's remarkably efficient grapevine. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Bradley stood in the doorway, his earlier confidence replaced by something that looked almost like humility. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to congratulate you on your promotion," he said, and for the first time, his words carried no hidden agenda or condescension. "I also wanted to apologize. I realize now that I approached things all wrong." I studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity, but found only what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Thank you, Bradley. I appreciate that. I've never had to earn anything before," he continued, moving to stand near the windows that had once been mine, then his, and were now mine again. "Everything was always just given to me. I thought that's how business worked. I was wrong." There was something in his admission that reminded me of myself 8 years ago, young, ambitious, but lacking the wisdom that only comes from facing real challenges. The difference was that his challenges had been cushioned by privilege, while mine had been sharpened by necessity. Business is about relationships, Bradley. Real relationships built on mutual respect and shared success. You can't shortcut that process, no matter who your father is. He nodded, looking out at the city lights. "I'm hoping to learn that now. Dad says you're the best operations executive he's ever worked with. Maybe you could teach me how to actually earn my place here." It was a request I hadn't expected, and one that required careful consideration. In the corporate world, today's rival could become tomorrow's ally, and holding grudges was often less profitable than building bridges. "We'll see, Bradley. Prove to me that you're willing to start at the bottom and work your way up based on merit, and maybe we can have that conversation." 3 months later, as I reviewed quarterly reports showing record-breaking performance across all operational metrics, I reflected on how completely the situation had transformed. Bradley was indeed starting from the bottom, working as a junior analyst in business development, arriving early and staying late to prove his commitment. His attitude had shifted from entitled to earnest, and while he still had a long way to go, the effort was genuine. Marcus had adapted to the new reality with the pragmatism of a seasoned CEO who understood that board decisions, once made, needed his full support. Our working relationship had evolved from paternal tolerance to genuine professional respect, and the company was stronger for it. The board's message had been clear: Meridian Consulting Group was a meritocracy, not a family business, and success would be determined by performance rather than bloodline. It was a lesson that resonated throughout the organization, inspiring junior employees while reassuring clients that excellence remained the company's primary value. As for me, the promotion had opened doors I'd never imagined. Industry recognition, speaking engagements, job offers from competitors, all validating that the 8 years of 18-hour days and sacrificed weekends had been worth it. But more importantly, I'd proven to myself that in America's corporate landscape, talent and determination could still triumph over privilege and connections. The Chicago skyline stretched endlessly before me as I prepared to leave for the day, my expanded team having delivered another exceptional quarter. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, I was content knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply allowing competence to rise to its natural level and watching merit prevail over entitlement. In the end, Bradley's attempt to take my office after one team lunch had backfired spectacularly, resulting in me taking not just his position, but a significantly higher one after a single board vote. It was a reminder that in the business world, authentic relationships and proven performance carry more weight than family connections and inherited privilege. The rain had stopped, and the city lights twinkled like stars against the darkening sky, each one representing someone's dream, someone's struggle, someone's victory. Tonight, at least one of those dreams had prevailed, and that was enough.